We're all Mavericks.
Welcome to Mamash Mavericks.
With your hosts, Maynard and Breslow.
We're Olim and Gerim.
And we're also entrepreneurs and marketers.
October 7th changed everything,
including the way we do business.
This is the show that realigns your business and goals
with your values and people.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Mamash Mavericks. Today we're joined by Aryeh Eisenberg. Aryeh is the CEO and founder of Edu-Together. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
No, I'm really excited, really grateful. You know, usually we do these things remote, and you made the long trek all the way from Beit Shemesh all the way up here.
But Modi'in.
Wow, even better.
But no matter where I come from, it is great to be here. Yeah, as I said to you before, Israel is not that large.
Yeah.
So when we have to travel all the way up north to go someplace, it's really my pleasure to be here in person and to be able to do this conversation live.
Now, that's great. Now that we're here, right, all the technical difficulties out of the way, now we can get going, right? So, today, really excited. We're going to be talking about you, obviously, your journey, Edu-Together. We're going to be doing a deep dive on online learning, educational technology, business management, and teacher training, all this stuff that is your day-to-day life, right?
I was going to say, that sounds like a regular day at the office, but happy to dive in with you and see where this conversation goes. So a lot to talk about, that's for sure.
Very good. So usually it's funny because I usually start off like, tell me where you're based, obviously, but here we are live, right? So, we'll just get right into it. Tell me a little bit about Edu-Together. Tell me about how this came about.
Sure. So I made Aliyah together with my wife and my two children almost 16 years ago. And when I came, I was coming from a career as an educator. Most of my career was spent in the Jewish day school world in the US, first in Baltimore and then in New Jersey. And the advice I got when I made Aliyah was stay away from the educational system in Israel. It's no place you're never going to be able to make a living, the language, the certification, the this, the that, the bureaucracy. And I'm a pretty stubborn guy. Those people who know me know that if you tell me not to do something, that's usually my challenge exactly to go ahead and do it. And I really love being a teacher. I loved working with students, and I really wanted to find a way to make a viable career opportunity for me here in Israel. And I was very lucky when I made Aliyah. I remember I actually was able to land a job teaching English at a high school near Beit Shemesh, actually. And it was a fantastic position. But the skeptics were correct. And when I got my first paycheck, I have to say that my wife, who has been amazingly supportive all the way through everything, we looked at it together, and she made the right call. And she said, you can't do this forever. I think I was teaching 3-4 classes. I brought home a paycheck of like 1,600 shekel or something like that. And after a lot of back and forth, I went into the high tech world. I said, I kind of realized maybe people were right. Maybe education was not a viable option for me. And I worked for a really cool company in Kfar Saba. I'm doing training developing. But when your heart is in a certain place, that's what you need to do. And education was really calling. And I started to meet a lot of people over these first few years being in Israel who were similar in experience to me. They had left careers in education and we're now working in customer service or technical writing or one of the other popular Olim careers that people go into. And I kind of said to myself, there has to be a way that schools in America who are searching for good teachers all the time, and people here who want to teach, but for whatever reason can't do it in their local environment, maybe there's a way that we can make this happen. And my background in the States was mostly related to educational technology. And at that point, I remember today Zoom is the big buzzword, but I remember we were using a platform called WebEx. I don't know if anybody
I actually don't know what. I'm pretty familiar with a lot of these ones, but not WebEx.
WebEx was one of the original video conferencing platforms. It's now owned by Cisco, but back in the day, I think it was just its own standalone company. But that's really how we launched Edu-Together, with 2 or 3 schools who were willing to kind of take this journey with us. And that was back in 2012. And here we are in 2024. And thank God, this has been an amazing adventure. Edu-Together is really going strong. We're working with a lot of schools as well as private students. And we've really proven, I think, that online learning can work if it's done correctly, and that it really can be successful for both schools and for students.
Well, I love that, right? A lot of people have that kind of similar story. You come to Israel. I'm surprised the advice that they gave you don't make Aliyah, right? I think that's also like one of the things like, oh, why, how? And
we knew that we were going to make Aliyah. That was never a question. Thanks to organizations like Mamash Moments and the rest out there, our Aliyah experience was pretty smooth. But I think it takes a lot of Olim time to kind of find themselves professionally and almost to reinvent themselves.
Yeah.
I know a lot of Olim who have really gone through similar journeys and who may be doing something similar to what they were doing in the States, but have really had to rethink or repurpose themselves a little bit to make it work here in Israel. But that's part of the Aliyah process.
And it's great, right? They already are doing education, and then you're like, well, I guess I got to bite the bullet and go do this high tech thing. And then you combine the two, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
And it was, but I think that's kind of the, like, Tony Robbins talks about, like, burn the boats, right? He didn't make it up, but he talks about this concept. And that's kind of what happened here. It sounds like, right? You make Aliyah, we're going to make it. Like, it's not like we're going to go back. Like, we got to make it work somehow. Right. But when our backs are against the wall and we have to really, like, I think Hashem brings us to this place where we have to really lean into him, lean into Emunah, and we have to do the extra hishtadlus or reinvent ourselves, like you said, in a way that if you hadn't made Aliyah, you'd still be maybe living the same life you were before, or if it would have like worked out where you're just barely making it or a little bit more, you would have just stayed in the education system. The fact that it was now viable and sustainable, right, was really actually such a blessing in the end, where like it kind of forced you in a way to be doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. At the end, everything happens for a reason. Gamzu Latov, as we say. And for us, for myself, my family, my business, it's really has been a journey, but it's been an adventure. That's what I always say when people have come to me asking me for advice on going into education or starting a business in Israel. The advice I always give people is that you have to take everything as it comes. You can only plan to a certain point. You can go in with the blueprint, you can go in with a template, but the way the business world works, and I think many of us know this, you never know which way things are going to go. And I could tell a lot of stories where that's the case with Edu-Together, and I think that's the case with business in general.
Yeah, and I mean, that seems to be like the main combining force. If someone's going to be an entrepreneur, be a business owner, they have to, I always say, it's like, how much pain tolerance do you have? And like, how much can you take a beating and get back up and do it again? How many times can you like have your head in your hands and be like, I don't know how this is going to happen. And then all of a sudden, that very same time where you're like surrendering, you're really just like, I don't know. And then that's when it seems like the breakthroughs happen like every time, right?
So look, I really believe, and I tell this to my staff, mostly educators, that as teachers, we're also students at the same time. And it's something I've really believed from my first year as a teacher. And it's something that my mentor, I remember, really instilled upon me, that we are always learning, that we are always continuing the process. Nobody knows how to do everything. And that's part of our role. And I think it's true in education. I think it's true in the business world. And whether it's rolling with the punches and making mistakes and learning from those mistakes, or getting lucky on the other side and saying, hey, this will never work. And hey, wait a second, that worked. And wow, look where we are now. I think it's all part of the process.
Yeah, that's another thing, right? I think like we have this entrepreneurial mindset that you need to have. But I don't generally think of like educators as having that entrepreneurial mindset, but having...
We don't.
Yeah. But making Aliyah, I think you have to have like that kind of... You have to have that resilience to make Aliyah and to stay here, that I think...
So look, my wife, who is a social worker, I think really put it best. My wife, Debbie, always says that for a family to be able to make a successful Aliyah, you have to, number one, have a sense of humor, because you never, like we said before, you never know where things are going to go. And you have to be able to laugh. Sometimes you can either in life laugh or cry. Yeah. And laughing is always more healthy. The second thing, I think you have to have a strong relationship with your family, with your spouse. I think that's really important. And the third thing, we don't like to talk about it because it's always the elephant in the room, but I think it does help to plan the Aliyah out a little bit and to come with at least a little bit of savings, to come with at least a little bit of some starting money in the bank, because the reality is it does take us as Olim a little bit of time to get our feet up in the air and to get things going, to figure out where we're going to live and work and to really recreate our lives here. And I think those are I agree with my wife that those are really the three main ingredients for a successful Aliyah process.
So I guess we need to go make a time machine and go back in time and tell Maynard that, because I just showed up here right on a 3-month tour with a bag by myself. Maybe it's different with the family, obviously.
I think it's different when you're single.
Right, no doubt.
And you can do those things.
Yeah.
Listen, I came with 2 kids. My oldest son, who's now 19, was 3 at the time.
Wow.
My youngest son, who's now almost 17, was 1 at the time. And I had a responsibility, and my wife and I both did. And we could, where a single person can say, hey, you know what, I'll sleep on a friend's couch or I'll figure it out. We really had to make a commitment to ourselves, to our children, that we were going to do it the right way and make it work. And thank God.
I think that adds another layer though as well, because what I've found, right, is like a person can be single their whole life and never make steps forward, right? When you get married, people are like, I have to have this much amount of money to get married. Okay, right? I have to have this much. We have to be making this much to have the kid. And trust me, that's totally normal. That's totally great. But what I found is that when I get married, somehow something happened that kicked me in the butt, that all of a sudden Parnassa is much bigger than it was before. And when I have the kid, something happens where the kid, right? They say the kid comes with the loaf of bread. And there's just something to that as well, right? Like kicks you in the butt and makes you get your stuff together.
Remember, it's the 3 ingredients together. So what was the third? The second ingredient was a strong relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that if you have that, you support each other in the process, and you make it work. Ask anybody who has, we've all made Aliyah, we've all been through the process, and we've all had our ups and downs. And I don't think there's a day where we know we didn't make the right decision.
Yeah.
It's as tough as some of the challenges have been. And we all have stories that, again, now we can look back on and laugh at. And at the time, we may not have been laughing. We may have been crying, or we may have been yelling, or whatever it was. But 16 years is, people ask me, do you feel like you've been here a long time? And I always answer that it depends on the circumstance on the day. With certain things, it feels like I've been here forever. But there are still things where it feels like we're brand new and we're still olim chadashim.
Yeah.
So it really depends, but I think that's normal. That's part of the journey.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely want to get deeper into together. But this to me is like fascinating. I think there's a lot of people out there, right, that maybe Aliyah's on their mind or whatever, and that's right. So I mean, how have you dealt with? For me, I have my answer, right? But like, how have you dealt with those situations where you're American and now you got to be Israeli? Or have you learned how to be Israeli, I guess? How do you deal with like the bureaucracy and the stuff that goes on and making sure, hey, you know what, this stuff's going to get done?
So I think, first of all, there's a misconception that Israel is the only country in the world with bureaucracy.
Of course.
Let's be honest. The U.S. has bureaucracy,
of course,
too.
100%.
The reason...
Everybody who's been to the DMV knows.
Correct.
Like,
that's exactly what I was thinking of. That line standing at the DMV. The difference is we're more comfortable dealing with the situation and with the people who are causing the bureaucracy. Dealing with the Israeli bureaucracy may be a little bit different, but at the same time, it's not so different. I think that as far as the Olim journey goes, I think one of the smartest things we did as a family was starting off in a place with other Olim. And we started off, we lived in an amazing city of Modi'in for the first 15 years that we were here. Our office is in Modi'in, and Modi'in was an amazing home for us. About 6 months ago, we moved to Hashmonaim, which is right across the highway. But still, one of the reasons we love Hashmonaim as well as Modi'in is because of the mix of Anglo and Israelis, where we still feel like we're part of Israel, but at the same time, when you don't understand that long form you're trying to fill out, or you have to figure out how to register your children for school, or you have to figure out how to get your son a driver's license or health insurance or whatever else you're trying to do as an Olah, there are people to help you. And there are people not only to help you, but there are people who have been through it before. And by the way, the same is true with starting a business. When I started Edu-Together, I talked with several people who had been through this journey, and some of them told me what to do. And some of them also told me, don't do this and don't go this way. And those pieces of advice were equally helpful because they, drawing on experiences for people who have been through it themselves, is really something that you can't read in a text. It's not something that you're going to find anywhere other than from talking to those people. And I really am still thankful to many people who gave me their time and their guidance and their their stories when I was starting out.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. There's something to be said, obviously, about having the proper support system, obviously, and not feeling on an island completely, right? And here I am, I'm 7 years in, right? And I've definitely afforded myself plenty of like insulatory experiences and stuff like that. But that being said, right, do you feel like maybe moving to a place where there's majority Anglos can be a detriment or like can maybe hold back your growth? Like that'd be like, for me as an entrepreneur, being like, well, I want to start this business, but I'm also going to be like working my 9 to 5 and I can never really start the business and get the business going as long as I'm just like comfortable and in my place and like.
So look, I think it really depends on the family and what you're coming in with. How your Hebrew is before you arrive in Israel, I think is also something that needs to be considered. Every city in Israel has its advantages and reasons to go there. That's what we love. One of the things we love about Israel, that we can go to any city, any yeshuv, any kibbutz, whatever it is, and we're still at home. Because it's all Israel.
For sure.
And I can tell you personally, we've really tried over the last 16 years to see the country, the north, the south, and everything in between. And we always feel that even going down to a lot, we still feel we're at home. And there's something to be said for that. So I think every family has to do their own research, figure out like where they belong and where they're going to be the most comfortable. And God willing, they pick the right place and they make it work. And if they don't pick the right place, you know what? Country's not that large.
You can move. That's the whole thing too. I think people, obviously you have to do your research, but there's so much to be said about like entrepreneurship. Fail quickly and get up, right? Like the more the people are like trying to figure it out, it has to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. Aliyah's never going to be perfect. Yeah. Entrepreneurship, business never going to be perfect. You're never going to have the perfect system. You optimize, you get there and you get better by doing it. Right. And I think that's like one of the things that people lack with Aliyah or entrepreneurship, right? Where it's like, of course, like you don't just go in without a plan unless you're Maynard and crazy, right? But like for the most part, I'm the kind of person to jump into things,
And for some people that works really well. My wife and I are both not like that.
Yeah.
We both needed a little bit more of a script, if you will. And luckily, there's no set template.
Yeah. There's no right or wrong.
That's what I was saying before. Like everybody's going to have their own experience. And thank God we have so many mechanisms for support, whether it be the different Aliyah absorption centers in the cities or the yeshuvim that we go to live, whether it be Nefesh Ben Nefesh, whether it be Telfed, if we're coming from South Africa, whatever it is, we're lucky to have those supporting organizations around us because there are a lot of things. I've had lots of conversations with people who came to Israel 40, 50 years ago, and their stories were very different.
Yeah.
They got successful.
We got it easy. Wow.
Exactly.
We are like, we said, oh, Mazgan, it's so high, turn on the Mazgan. It's like
Mazgan. I was talking to one person who said there was one phone in his entire yeshuv, and they got to use it like every couple of weeks to make a quick phone call back to the States.
Now we have WhatsApp, we have video chatting, we have, we have Zoom, we have online things, right? And that leads us to the next thing, right, with online learning, right? Where even where a kid can be remote, and these were concepts that seemed even foreign 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Well, believe it or not, online learning has actually kind of been slowly, I guess, percolating or rising up. I remember when I was teaching and serving as the director of technology at a school in New Jersey, I had a couple of students by last year before Aliyah who came into my office every day to take an online Spanish class because the school didn't have a Spanish teacher to teach them the level that they needed. And I was watching them work every day. They would sit in my office and basically participate in these asynchronous lessons. They would watch a video. They would try to mimic what was going on. And I said to myself, even back then, there has to be a better way because that wasn't learning. They were memorizing, but they weren't actually learning how to speak the language. So I always kept that kind of in the back of my mind. And when we started Edu-Together way back in 2012, it wasn't an easy sell. I remember having to go to schools, most of them Jewish day schools, but some non-Jewish ones as well. I remember having to go to explain what it means to take a class online, what a video conference was, what they needed. You need to have good internet in your school building. You need to have computers. These things weren't taken for granted the way they are today. Now, we always look at the pandemic as a bad thing, but for online learning, the pandemic really showed that it could be effective if done correctly.
Yeah.
Now, that's a big caveat. because many schools around the world didn't do it correctly. Yeah. And they had pretty negative experiences with online learning. But the schools that we were working with and the schools that we've worked with since, at least now, people understand what it means to take a class online. And when you do it with Edu-Together or with a provider that has the skills and knows what they're doing to make it successful, then the process can really be a very successful part, a very important part of the educational offerings. Edu-Together works with both private schools in the United States as well as many private students who, for whatever reason, are not in the regular school system. And I can tell you that even the best private school in the United States may not be able to do everything themselves. And one of the things we're able to do with online learning is to cater to those more individual needs. So when you have 2 kids in your school who want to take an advanced math class, or you have 3 kids in the school who want to take an AP course that isn't offered right now, the school doesn't have to say, no, I'm sorry, we can't do that, because there's an easy, viable, and high quality solution. And that's really where Edu-Together comes in, to show, hey, wait a second, where does the learning process start? Learning process is about the needs of the students. That's why we as teachers are here. That's why we as educators do what we do.
Yeah. And is Edu-Together meant to be like supplemental, like you take extra classes here and there, or is it meant to be, hey, you show up from 8 to 2 and everything's done here? Is it kind of both, or you've done both, or?
It's a little of each. We have basically 2 divisions of the company. Division number 1 was how we started the work that we do with our private schools. And typically what will happen is a school, let's say in New Jersey or in California, it doesn't matter. We'll get in touch with us and say, hey, you know what? We don't have a Spanish teacher, or we need another math teacher, or we want to offer physics and we can't do it ourselves. And then Edu-Together will work with the school and we'll create the class for them. We'll provide the teacher, but we'll work according to the school's schedule, their academic requirements, their organizational structure, whatever it is, and we'll make it so the course actually almost fits into their school program pretty seamlessly. So that's part of what we do. And in that case, a student in a typical private school that's working with us might take 1 or 2 online classes a day, but the rest of their day is going to be traditional education in person. On the other side, Edu-Together is also an accredited school. So that means that just like any other school in the United States, Edu-Together can provide diplomas at the end of 12th grade. We can provide transcripts and all of the things that a regular school does. And we have several students who are learning with us full time, like you said, from the morning till the afternoon, because for whatever reason, they are not in a traditional school building. It could be that it was a social issue or an academic issue or emotional health. There's so many different reasons why students come to us. But just like a regular school, we have services like college guidance. We have services like a guidance counselor. We have electives that we offer. So we really, in many cases, really are able to even surpass the course offerings of a traditional school by being able to offer more options. Those are really the 2 main divisions that make up Edu-Together.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. And obviously you bring up a great point, right? As far as the student needs, right? I think that there's a lot of things where people were mainstreamed or whatever, well, maybe they needed extra help in certain areas, right? And whether it be emotional or with learning disabilities, whatever it may be. For instance, like I have ADHD, right? So when it came down to test time, when if I didn't have time and a half or double time, it would seem like I'm not up to par, right? But when I have those things, I'm exceeding in the class. I'm one of the top, scorers and stuff like that. And there's so many kids that I think are getting left behind, right? Because they're just expected to be thrown in there with everybody when maybe they would benefit from, okay, this class, as opposed to being there with everybody, here is a class here where maybe and you're able to kind of have your community more in that way, whether it be the whole day or it be for a specific class, right? Where you can have that community and you can go on your pace or learn in a different kind of way, teach in a different kind of way where it's not going to be affecting everybody and they're still able to be mainstream for other classes or whatever it may be in that regard.
Well, that's a very popular use of Edu-Together. And we have a number of students that certainly fit that kind of description where we're helping them with certain subjects. And it could be, by the way, that they're not lagging behind. It could be that they are so advanced that their school just can't accommodate that. We have a couple of every year. It's funny. We always joke about students like this in a good way. But every year we have like a couple of 5th and 6th graders who somehow are learning like calculus. And let's face it, this is not a knock on their schools.
Yeah.
They get bored in class. But the typical elementary or middle school in the United States does not have calculus teachers on staff, nor should they, because that's not something that usually comes up. But being able to pull these students out of their standard math class, have them learn with Edu-Together, gives them that opportunity to excel at their own pace. And on the other end too, students do learn at different paces. Like you said, they learn at different levels. They learn in different ways. And if we can help those students to be able to succeed, then that's why we're here. That's what we as educators do. And it's a win for everybody. It's a win for, first and foremost, for the student, but it's also a win for the school, for our teachers, for the sense of that we get to help those students. And it really shows that with a little bit of creativity and ingenuity, that we can really help almost every student that's out there to get a quality and successful education.
No, that's great. It's amazing. You mentioned creativity, ingenuity, right? I think that goes into educational technology, right? And like how it's something that's, been growing and everything like that. Tell me about Edu-Together and educational technology. Is it something where like you're using already resources that are available like Zoom or whatever else? Or maybe you're using a mishmash of this and that, or maybe you've been able to come up with, hey, you know what, they don't offer like we need, we've noticed this. So we've got to go out there and make these kind of things.
So it's funny, Maynard, because I was doing educational technology in the schools before educational technology was even a term. Mm-hmm. I was very lucky to have started at an amazing school in Baltimore, Maryland called Beth Tefillah Dahan Community School. That was really one of the pioneers in the Jewish day school world, at least, in educational technology. And I really learned a lot working there and learned a lot about the uses, both from the technical side as well as the educational side. And one of my rules as a director of technology in schools, as the head of Edu-Together, is that technology is really there to assist the learning process. And it can't be the other way around. It can't be that we're changing the learning process only to be able to say, hey, we're using technology. It doesn't, that doesn't work. And people have tried to do it that way. And it never works the right way, at least in my opinion. So
education systems built that way for a reason.
Correct.
It's catered towards the kids, not the other way around.
Exactly. At least it should be. So in Edu-Together, we really urge our teachers to use a lot of technological-based tools. We provide a lot of professional development, PD. We provide a lot of training. We really try to keep our ear to the ground as to what the new trends are, what's available. And we really do urge our teachers and help coach them to be able to incorporate new technological abilities into their classroom. However, my colleagues will tell you that if somebody comes and says, oh, can we start using X or can we get this? My answer will always be, show me what you're going to do with it. How is this going to better the education that you're providing your students? And very often the teacher has a plan already and says, well, if I have this platform, if I have this tool, I can do X, Y, and Z. And I will be the first person. Is not an issue. If it's going to help our students, we do it. But if on the other side, if a teacher can't yet tell me specifically, okay, I'm going to use this to do blank, then it doesn't mean it's a dead issue. It means that we're going to work with the teacher now to maybe do some prep, to maybe do some lesson planning, to maybe do some research to see, okay, if we had that capability or if we had that tool, what could we do with it to help our students? And that's really the way we work. So we use a ton of different third-party platforms and tools to do what we do. We're dabbling in AI now, of course, because, hey, everybody's dabbling in AI. That's the new magic buzzword. But again, first and foremost, and I can hear in my mind my mentor saying this out loud, what does it do for the student? Does it help him or her? Does it help that student to receive a better education? And that's really the question that we always ask ourselves at the beginning of the technological investigation.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. You mentioned AI, and obviously it is a big buzzword, and there are so many amazing uses for it. And there's also uses that aren't so great, right? Where AI is kind of like butted into the classroom and made it difficult for teachers to actually teach students because the students are just like, oh, like I can just write a paper with this, or I can write a paper with that. right? I guess like how do these kind of not so good parts of educational technology or technology without education, how has that kind of affected your job and what you guys are doing at Edu-Together?
So look, every time new technology is introduced, we as educators have to figure out how to adapt. That's part of our jobs. I'll share a funny story with you, at least funny in retrospect. Back in the early 2000s, when people started walking around with phones, and they weren't smartphones yet, they were just phones at that point, one of the principals I was working for at a different school came over to me one day and said, how can we stop these from working in the building? And I looked at him and I was like, you can't do that. Like, first of all, from a legal standpoint, I researched it, like, don't go there. But like, why would you? So I said, okay, well, that's not an option. But the reality is that students are now all walking around with phones. And we know to look at today's world, it's only gone forward. Those phones have gotten better. The capabilities have gotten greater. So, so I set to work. I said, okay, how can this phone be used as an educational tool? And I showed a group of students in the school. I think they were 11th grade students who were getting ready to take their SATs. I showed them how to create podcasts, not so different from this one, to help with SAT vocabulary words. Very simple, no lights or cameras, but just basically how to use the phone as a recording device and to be able to use it as a study guide. And I remember the next day, all the students in the school were walking around like saying like, mouthing words and like, okay, and the definitions. And I said, okay, does that mean that they're never going to use their phones again for something non-educational? Of course not. Well, but at least we showed them that when they needed to, it could be part of the educational story. And I think the same is true with AI. Look, we know that with sites like ChatGPT and Perplexity and Tomy and all the rest of them, we know what the capabilities are. So part of that means that we as teachers have a responsibility to adapt. We have to make sure, for example, our test questions can't be so basic that students can just copy and paste them and look them up on ChatGPT. We have to put a little bit more thought into the way we are assessing our students, to the way to what we're asking our students to do. Again, does that mean that the process is going to be eliminated? That the issue is going to be eliminated? Of course not. But like anything else, we have to adapt. And that's really what we try. And that's through our writing assignments. That's through even our math and science teachers are not finding ways, number one, to use AI sites within their instruction, but also to limit a student's ability to be able to just, do a copy paste from a ChatGPT site to a document. And again, we provide our teachers with a lot of training and professional development on this. And listen, we're only at the beginning. Let's be honest. AI is just in its infancy stages now. It's not going away, and it's only going to go up. So the fact is that education is going to have to change to meet it. Now, some of the people we work with have realized that, and there are still a lot of schools that haven't gotten that message yet and are going to have to catch up. But that's the reality.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess everything is created, right? Hashem has a hand in everything's created, right? And everything's created for the good. So there's like Kabbalistic, there's like a klipa noga, right? Where it's like in the middle, it's this gray area that can be pulled out, good out of it, right? And I think we have the tendency that we're just like, oh, I don't know it, it's no good, right? And we just like kind of dismiss things, and it can be done, with any sort of technology, and like Robert Cherebi talked about, radio is, all these things are meant for Torah. They're all meant to like bring, more Yiddishkeit out or more Torah out.
Listen, look how easy it is now with all the different platforms that are out there to code. And that's something that I remember when I was in school back in the Stone Age. No, I'm back in like the 90s. When I was a student in high school, to go code, you had to really know what you were doing. You had to really start from scratch. Now we have all these platforms, code.org and CodeMonkey and all the rest of Scratch and all these sites that make coding easy. And I think that's a wonderful thing.
GitHub, all these places where you can even see how other people are doing it, or you don't have to recreate the wheel every single time.
100%. And that's part of progress. And again, what's our job as educators? Our job is to be teaching for this generation, not for the last generation. We have a responsibility to prepare our students for their future, not for our future.
Oh, for sure. So AI is obviously one of the buzzwords, right? Another buzzword is data, right? And I'm interested, right? We talk about education technology. We talk about, obviously, you have students, so many students and so many teachers. I'm sure you're able, right, in a classroom setting, it's not something where maybe you're just able to get all this data, right? Is that something that's interesting to Edu-Together that you're doing already, or anything that's integrated or things that you're working on? And like, what's kind of been surprising in that sense to you as well?
So it's interesting, in compared to other online schools, we're still kind of small, we're as compared to some of the big players out there. But about a year and a half ago, we received our accreditation from Cognia, which is one of the largest accreditation agencies in the United States for private schools. And part of the accreditation process was really to both collect and to analyze data. And I think it was a wonderful thing for us. I have to thank my colleague, our director of education, Khan Election Bob, who really spearheaded this effort. And Hannah really worked to start a formal data collection process that was really multifaceted, from our teachers, from our students, from the families, from the schools. And now it's actually been really exciting, because about almost 2 years later, we're starting to really approach the levels of having formal data that we can analyze and we can start to learn a lot from. A lot of what we did before was anecdotal as opposed to the raw numbers. And that the anecdotal experience has definitely helped us to grow, but it actually is an exciting time for us now to be able to have actual survey data and numbers and other things to look at. I will say that one of the goals that I had with Edu-Together when I started was that we keep it on the small side, because there is something to be able to know every single student that we're working with and their families. And thank God our students have really been successful. The students who have graduated with Edu-Together have gotten into some of the US's top universities, places like Brandeis, places like Princeton. So we're talking Ivy League colleges and universities. So we know we're doing something right. But like anybody else, like I said before, we're also students, and always continuously looking to see how we can improve, how we can make what we're doing stronger and better. And that data that we're now collecting has already started to help us do that.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And obviously, like you said, the technology, the data, all these kind of things that are new are meant to be in the point of how can we help the students, right? Not like how can we manipulate the students or whatever, right? And kind of being able to, like you said, education is done a certain way, but we can optimize it now with certain data, realize how can we help these kids and all that kind of stuff, right? But obviously, education, the main component, for me, it's teachers, right? For me, what do you remember at the end of the day? You remember teachers. I remember I love this teacher, or I hated that teacher, God forbid, right? But the teachers are what make a difference in the kid's life. They're at school just as much, if not more, time than they're spending at home or with their parents. And the teachers interacting with the kids have such a huge influence on them. And I guess with this thing where you're able to reach kids wherever they are, and that's such an amazing thing, right? Obviously, that teacher component is so huge. And how do you properly train teachers and get them to that point and being able to be that hybrid of, hey, I'm the person here, but I'm talking to you from behind a screen?
So look, when I started Edu-Together, I had no idea that it was going to become, even though we're still a small company, I look at us as having grown tremendously.
How many people do you have?
We right now have about 55 teachers on our staff, including myself, by the way, because I still do teach. That's what I
that's great.
do. And
are you like the principal? Or are you like that? They get sent to you as well?
Luckily in an online environment, there aren't too many behavior issues. But again, I have to really thank my colleague, Hannah, our director of education, because she really does the day-to-day management of our school. But when it comes to recruiting teachers, when it comes to training teachers, it's something we take very seriously. Mm-hmm. Look, from an employment standpoint, Edu-Together is a pretty nice deal. We pay competitively, but besides that, you're at home. You don't, if you're a parent, you don't have to deal with babysitting. If you're a one car or no car family, you don't have to deal with transportation. Everything happens in a very convenient manner. Yeah. And we get a lot of CVs, a lot of applications every month to come work for us. And we're very selective in who we bring on our staff. We have teachers that have been with us. It's crazy. Every year when we do our end of the year dinner, which we do, we have teachers who have been with us since the beginning, which says something. I think our teachers are really dedicated, and we really have built almost a virtual family. It's amazing to me to see what happens. We have a WhatsApp group that we have with our staff. And when somebody has a new baby or somebody gets engaged or, God forbid, somebody passes away, you can feel the support. And some of these teachers have never met each other. Some have only met each other a couple of times over the years. Edu-Together sponsored an amazing event over Hanukkah time together with an organization called Smiles for the Kids. We sponsored a Hanukkah party in Chashmonaim for the children and families of fathers who were on Miluim and who got called away to go fight. And so many of our teachers came out to volunteer and were there making cotton candy or doing art projects or popcorn or whatever it is. And I looked around and I have to tell you, it was amazing. It was something that I never thought from a virtual organization we would ever see. And I think it goes to show how special our teachers are, how dedicated they are, and how much what they do for Edu-Together really means to them. We have a very careful recruiting process. Obviously, everything that anybody else does as far as checks and references, we certainly do. But we also put our teachers through not just pre-teaching training, but also continuous training. Like I said before, we have a lot of professional development that our teachers are required to do. But it's funny because even most of our teachers do their professional development and participate in a lot more than they actually have to. And when I've asked a few of them, like, why do you keep coming? We do them Sunday night Israel time. And they're like, this because I love this. I love to learn new things. I want to help my students. This is cool. Whatever the answer is. And again, it just goes to show the dedication of our team. I wish I could sit here and name them all but there are 55 of us. So it would take, but every one of the teachers on our staff are such important parts of what we do. And we really do value their professionalism, their commitment. One of the things we've had to do, this is a good thing, but as Edu-Together has grown, we actually do have teachers now that are outside of Israel, which we didn't at the beginning.
Okay.
So we have some teachers in the US, we have some teachers in Europe, and we have a couple of teachers in South America. So we really are a global organization, but everybody's part of the Edu-Together family. And it doesn't matter where you're physically located. What matters is the commitment that you're giving to the organization and most important to the students.
Yeah, it's amazing. That was going to be one of my questions too, as well as like where located around the world, Israel. So that's great. I'm glad you mentioned that. But you mentioned obviously having 55 teachers. It's amazing. And talking about the growth, right? We started off where you come here and you're 1,600 shekel and you're like, wow, you're right. And it's just you and the whole thing. Now I'm 55 and you're like, we're small and this is that.
Things, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So there's that aspect of growth, right? What are some of the things that you have done to grow? Obviously, right, in terms of like business management, in terms of marketing, in terms of whatever, right? Because obviously it's not just like you will build and they will come, right kind of thing.
So look, we are definitely the little guy in the global educational market. There's so many companies that run online schools, online classes. We like to think we're the best. That's what we do. And we really give the personal service that I don't think anybody else is giving. But, obviously business development and growth are something that are always on our minds. It's been interesting. A lot of our business actually has been organic, where we're working with this family and it's going so well that they tell their friends and they sign up. So that actually has been our best tool is the organic growth. And it's true on the school side also. But in addition to that, I still do several trips every year to the US to meet with potential schools, to meet with, to remind people what we do and how we can help them. We attend different conferences every year, both in the Jewish educational world as well as in the general educational sector. And, we've always tried to keep our marketing and sales and, when it comes to like advertising expenses at a minimum, because I've always looked at it that if we have to go and spend a lot of money on sales and placing advertisements and all of those things, that's money that we're taking away from what we really want to be doing, which is bringing in great teachers, helping our students, and really keeping everything in the organization. So over the years, we have done certain ad campaigns and we've dabbled in different things, but for the most part, like we really try to run a tight ship. We really try to keep formal marketing and advertising expenses at a minimum. How long we'll be able to do that is a good question. But as of right now, that's kind of the way we do it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that's always kind of like that step right of business management. But you mentioned, hey, we're the little guys, right? And then those big guys, I'm sure, are doing plenty of stuff to help them get there. And when they're at your pace, they're probably thinking the same thing, right? They're probably thinking, unless they came in with just all kinds of funding and had this long runway, I think any business that is doing things organically in the way that you did, that's kind of like that struggle, right? Like, when do we turn it up? Well, how do we get to a certain place? Of course, like nothing better is word of mouth or referrals, anything like that. But how are people going to hear about Edu-Together if outside of these communities, if they don't know about it?
So that's a constant question and a constant struggle. It's something that we keep coming back to. I think we've built, on the plus side, I think we've built an infrastructure where if we got 200 more students tomorrow, we'd be able to handle it and we'd be able to accommodate it without seeing a drop in quality or service. On the challenges, getting those 200 new students or getting those 200 new schools. So I think there's always like a give and take as to how you do it. I just came back from the States about a month ago and had some great meetings with some potential new schools. So everything the sales cycle can often take time. Especially now when a school says, oh my God, our math teacher just quit. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
Or it could be next year when they say, hey, you know what? We'd like to add a new level of math. Let's see how we can do it affordably. So again, it's just a matter of getting the word out there, reminding people of what we do through social media, through school visits, through all the different means that we have to work with.
No, that's great. And obviously, right, there's so many tools available, talking about educational technology, right? There's so many tools available that probably weren't available when we started this, right? And then making things easier. Obviously, not going in person and being there and talking to people, making that connection is also amazing. But like, if people before told you like, oh, you can't do education online, same thing, right? You can't do business development online. You got to show up there. You'd be like, you're crazy. What are you talking about? Like, we have 55 teachers now, kind of stuff, right? So I guess what's kind of your biggest challenge, right? You say, I mean, it's amazing that you have that infrastructure where you can come and take people in, take 200 students, they came in tomorrow, everything like that's amazing, right? That means you do have that tight ship. I guess what's kind of your biggest challenge from building that or being able to get them in or
so I think our greatest challenge is just notice. It's reminding people that we exist and reminding people that we're around. We are the little guy, and sometimes schools or families don't want to be the so-called test cases or guinea pigs, even though we've had a lot of demonstrated success. So I think it's been a process. Every year we've managed to grow a little bit more, and it's just a question of strategically, are we at the point yet where we're ready to go and secure funding or investors or to go spend serious money on a serious ad campaign or a marketing campaign? And that's a question that I wrestle with every single day. And I could give you the answer and say right now, this is what we're going to do tomorrow. I don't have that answer yet, but this is our 11th year in operations. I think we've demonstrated a successful product. We've demonstrated a way to make it work. And we definitely are open, if there are investors, if there are people who do want to become involved, that's not something we've ruled out. It's just something we haven't done yet. So I think at this point, and in all the points of Edu-Together's journey, I've always kind of tried to keep an open mind to anything. Even if it's something that we wouldn't have considered before, if somebody has a good idea, let's sit down and talk about it. Let's discuss. And I think that's also been one of the reasons for the growth and the success of Edu-Together, that we haven't come in with such a narrow viewpoint and said, I know it has to be this way or else we're not doing it. And I think that's part of what makes it work.
So I guess, as we come close to the end, you talked about people knowing you, everything like that. Tell us, how can people find out more about Edu-Together? How can they get in touch with you, or whether they're a school or whether they're a parent, and being able to find those resources for their students or their kids?
So the best place to go is our website, www.edutogether.org. We have the ability on our site. You can book a free consultation with either myself or a member of our admin staff. We'll be happy just to talk to you about what you need to see if how and if we can help. And we really invite as many people to do that as possible. We love talking to new families. We love talking to new schools. And even if there's not a need right now, you never know when Edu-Together is going to become a necessity. We've had people always ask me, like, what is your sales cycle? And I've had schools that we started with a school this year that I met with 4 years ago, before the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
And I, to be honest, when they called, I had to go back and look at my notes because it had been so long. But I had made an impression on the principal. She liked what we did, but the need happened now. They had 3 students who needed a math class that the school doesn't offer. So they came to us, and it's going phenomenally well. So hopefully this will be the beginning of a great relationship. So sometimes that's part of the process, but we're always happy to help and to discuss. We're definitely on social media. Facebook, and LinkedIn are our two main social media sites, but really the best thing to do, like we tell our students, like we tell our schools, if you have a question, you want to talk, just reach out and we will make time to do that.
Amazing. And everybody go and check out the links there will be here on the description, wherever you're listening. We'll have the links here for you to go and find Edu-Together. Now, I guess anything exciting in the future here coming down the pipeline that you want to share with us today?
So, we're really going to be continuing to do more of the great things that we're doing this year, God willing, in June. We are going to have our largest graduating class of seniors. We are going to have a graduating class of 14 students who are getting their Edu-Together Academy diplomas. Several of those students have already been accepted to either universities or gap year programs, which we're really excited about. And we really look at this time as just so exciting for everybody involved. We've been around for 11 years, but at the same time, it also feels like we're just getting started and that there's so much more we can do. So come and join us. If you have a child that's really not succeeding for whatever reason, in this traditional educational system, come and talk to us. Maybe it's a good fit, maybe right now, maybe later. Happy to speak with you. And if you're a school that's just having staffing issues, which most schools are today, and we know this is becoming a worldwide problem, we can help. And yeah, we all know that you rather have the teacher in the room, but the reality is that if you're going to go online, we are the best option because you're not sacrificing quality, you're not sacrificing the service, and your students will be successful. So, Maynard, thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. As we close, I got one more question, right? I always got to ask, what's your definition of success, whether professionally, personally, spiritually, right? What is success like to you?
That's a good question. I think my personal definition for success is knowing that either I or the collective, we made a difference. And I think that's really what everybody involved with Edu-Together does on a daily basis. Every day we have our challenges, we have our success stories, but really, did we make a difference today? I'll share one final story with you, Maynard. We had a very sad case this year. One of our private students who was involved in a domestic abuse case and was really caught in the middle. And we, believe it or not, from 7,000 miles away, we were able to help and be there for him. And thank God now the situation is leveling out. Things are getting better for this student. But the student and his mother both came back to us last week, and it brought us to tears. They both said that if you weren't there and you weren't here to help, we don't know if we would be here talking to you right now. And that, to me, it should never get to that serious of a case for anybody. And we feel terribly about, what the student is going through. But at the same time, that's what Edu-Together is here. We're here to make a difference. And sometimes that difference is academic. Sometimes that difference could be even more than that. And what we saw here, that the service, that the relationships that our teachers were able to develop with this student who was going through this difficult situation, even though they were distance relationships, they saved him. And that really made us know that what we're doing is ready. On a happy side, I'll just share, I don't think a month goes by where, thank God from our schools and from our private students, we have a lot of students who are here in Israel every year on gap year programs and seminaries or yeshiva or other programs. I don't think a month goes by where somebody from our staff is not hosting one of their former Edu-Together students for a Shabbat. My wife and I just had one of our students last week, Yafa, one of our longtime students from Connecticut and then from Virginia. She came with a friend to visit us, and it was so much fun. We don't normally get to meet our students in person, so sometimes that's like the first opportunity. I remember one of the students said, "Mr. Eisenberg, you have legs," and
right?
It was so funny, but that again just goes to show the connection that we do build with our students, and I think that's really what Edu-Together is all about.
Wow, amazing. Well, as we close, I just want to give a bracha to continue to see that work being done, where you're making an impact on the kids, where you see the kids growing and being amazing, and in turn you're continuing to grow the business, and it should also be an amazing gift at a home to have more shefa, more shalom bayis, more nachas from your children, and being able to grow this to where you were, that you came all the way across the world, you had the trust, and to do one step at a time, and to taking those steps, and to see really, really, really such amazing gifts coming from it, both from your students and at home.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for listening wherever you are, for making us a part of your day. And once again, Aryeh, thank you for coming out here to see us up here in Partisana.
A true pleasure.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you for
so
having me.
much. Thank you so much.